September 20th, 2014, from Doak Campbell Stadium in Tallahassee, Florida. It was the 22-ranked Clemson Tigers going into Florida State to face the number 1 ranked Seminoles. And what a game this was. The Clemson Tigers won the toss and chose to receive, but they would go 3 and out as they punted the ball to the Seminoles. But the Seminoles would go 3 and out as well as they punted the ball right back to the Tigers. The Tigers would then make it all the way to the Florida State 6-yard line, but then they missed a 23-yarder, and the score remained tied at 0. Florida State then took over with about 11 minutes left in the first quarter. They marched all the way down into field goal range, and that's when Roberto Aguayo scored on a 50-yard field goal to make it 3-0 as the Seminoles took the lead in this game as they scored the first points. Clemson then had the ball with less than 8 minutes left in the first quarter, but they would go 3 and out as they would punt. The Florida State Seminoles then took over and they punted on their next drive as well. So then the Tigers took back over with about 4.5 minutes left in the first. They brought the quarter to a close as they were driving into the red zone. They opened up the second quarter on the 13-yard line of Florida State. They would end up kicking a 30-yard field goal to tie this game up at 3 apiece. Florida State then got the ball and went 3 and out and punted the ball back to the Tigers. So the Tigers took back over with about 12.5 minutes left before halftime, but they would end up punting. So Florida State had the ball with a little less than 10 minutes left before halftime, but they would go 3 and out. And now the Tigers took over with a little less than 9 minutes before halftime, with this game still tied at 3. And 6 plays later, they would score as DJ Howard punched it in from 1 yard out to make it 10-3 to put the Clemson Tigers in the lead by a touchdown. So now the Florida State Seminoles took over with about 6 minutes left before halftime, but they would end up punting the ball. Clemson took over and they would go 3 and out and punt the ball back to Florida State, who then took over with about 2 minutes left and they punted it back to the Tigers, who would bring the first half to a close. So at halftime, the game was 10-3 with the Tigers ahead of the Seminoles. So starting off the second half, the Seminoles came out of the locker room fired up. 9 plays later, they scored on a 1-yard touchdown run as Pender punched it in to tie the score at 10 apiece. So now Clemson took over with about 11 minutes left in the third quarter, but they would end up punting, and the Florida State Seminoles would end up punting as well. So they punted the ball back to Clemson, who then took over with about 6.5 minutes left in the third. And they ended up bringing the third quarter to a close as the long drive got them all the way down to the Florida State 23-yard line, but then they missed a 40-yard field goal on the first play in the fourth quarter. So this game remained tied at 10 as the Florida State Spartans took over. But then Sean Maguire threw an interception as Jaron Curse intercepted the ball and gave the Tigers possession on their own 36-yard line. 4 plays later, and 64 yards in a minute and a half, the Tigers scored, capped off by a 2-yard run by Deshaun Watson to put them up 17-10. That was set up by a 39-yard catch from Mike Williams. So the Tigers were now up by a touchdown, and the Seminoles had the ball with less than 12 minutes left in this game. And then they would end up punting the ball back to the Tigers, who got the ball back with about 9 minutes left, but they went 3 and out. So now the Florida State Seminoles had the ball with 7.5 minutes left in the quarter. And Sean Maguire would make up for his interception as he led the Seminoles 76 yards in 3 plays with a 74-yard touchdown pass to Rashad Greene that tied this game up at 17 apiece. So the Tigers took over with 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter. They ended up punting the ball, so now it was the Florida State Seminoles ball. But then Sean Maguire threw his second interception of the game, this time to Jadar Johnson. And Jadar Johnson gave the Tigers the ball on the Florida State 26, so they were poised to score as they were already in field goal range. But then C.J. Davidson would fumble 2 plays later as Eddie Goldman forced the fumble, and Nate Andrews recovered. And so the Seminoles got the ball back on their own 14. They were able to bring this game to a close as we would see overtime with the score 17-17. So Clemson ended up getting the ball as they won the coin toss. But then they ended up going for it. It was 3rd and 14. They got 13 yards as Watson found Choice. Now it was 4th and 1. They went for it, and Choice got stuffed by the Florida State Seminole defense. So now it was up to the Seminoles And Karlos William first rips off a 13-yard run and then a 12-yard touchdown run, and the Florida State Seminoles win this game 23-17, and they do it without Jameis Winston, as he was not on the field for this game. The Florida State Seminoles win an exciting game as these two ranked teams faced off. And Sean Maguire was 21 for 39 with 305 passing yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. Deshaun Watson was 19 for 28 with 266 passing yards. And the leading rusher was C.J. Davidson with 54 yards off of 12 carries. And the leading receiver was Rashad Greene with 135 yards off of 9 receptions and 1 for a touchdown. So Florida State wins an exciting game as they look to remain atop the polls as the number 1 team by beating the 22 ranked Clemson Tigers 23-17.